8 minutes until showtime. Seven minutes until showtime. Six minutes until showtime. Minutes until showtime. showtime. Three, two, one. Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Trucking with Authority. I'm your host, Kenny Long, and for the next hour, consider me your navigator on your journey to success in the trucking business. This is the show where we can talk about anything trucking related, from getting started as a driver to becoming an owner-operator, leasing to a carrier, changing carriers, becoming a motor carrier yourself, getting your own authority, hauling freight under your own numbers, becoming a broker, or dealing with the FMCSA, the record-keeping requirements, the insurance requirements, dealing with brokers, finding freight, sales calls, working with direct shippers, you name it, this is the show for you. We can talk about it here. For those of you that are just joining, if you don't mind just sharing this video out to the various groups, and let's get this party started tonight. I didn't have a chance to broadcast it like I usually do every week. The past few weeks, for those of you that follow the show closely, obviously it has been crazy. For us here at Patriot Star, we have been so busy adding more trucks, helping owner-operators, just so much going on. And obviously I've missed a few of the episodes. A few times I just couldn't make it. Different freight needs, customer needs, owner-operators, training sessions all day long, you name it. I have been crazy busy, which is a good thing. Overwhelmed with work is a good thing. the freight market is rocking right now. It's still rocking. I've been saying that since the beginning of the year. First quarter set records, and we are still strong into the second quarter. That being said, I have been dealing with some interesting comments, interesting perspectives from a few people that are out there in the markets. I have a few comments from some of the owner-operators that work for me. I've had a ton of comments from the various owner-operators across the industry with, where's the freight? I keep talking about these records and rates and the fantastic market. Where's the freight? And they're sitting for 2 or 3 days waiting for a great rate. And they're just not seeing it out there. And I look at the operations, I look at what they're doing, and it's no surprise. Absolutely no surprise. You have to do your research. You have to know where the freight is if you want to stay busy in this market. The market is there. The money is there. The freight is phenomenal right now, but you have to be able to follow through and do what it takes to follow the market and follow the money. If you're in the spot market game, which most of us are, then you really have to understand where to position your trucks. Bear with me while I try to make some changes here. Try to make myself a little less transparent on the video. We're streaming live again tonight on all the platforms: YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and of course Blog Talk Radio. You can call the number at the bottom of your screen, 917-889-9924. Elizabeth is in the other room. She's sharing this out to all the various groups: Rates and Lanes group, the Trucking with Authority group, and all of the other associated trucking forums on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you need to find us in the future, you can find all the recordings in those groups. You can also check out blogtalkradio.com, Trucking with Authority show, and all of the past recordings are there as well. So if any of you have any questions or comments tonight, please dial the number, 917-889-9924. We're just getting started, getting some few people in the group here now, so we'll hold off for a few minutes. But if you have any questions or comments, 917-889-9924. Press 1 on your keypad that raises your hand in the green room. Elizabeth is in the other room screening calls, and we will get you on the air. Looks like we have plenty of people in the Facebook group already, and I haven't even put the, I didn't even publicize it to all the normal groups as I usually do. So that's a fantastic thing, and we've got quite a few phone calls on the line as well. If you're on the phone, again, press number 1, and we will get your questions and comments on the air. If you are driving and you are watching the live video, I like to put this disclaimer out. If you're watching YouTube or you're watching Facebook, what have we got? What's going on? Just grabbing your phone. Okay. All right. Again, if you're watching the video while you are driving, YouTube or Facebook Live while you are driving, please turn that video off. Call the number, 917-889-9924. You can listen to the show live. You don't have to press the number. This is not a conference call. You won't be on the air live unless you want to be. Once you're on there, if you have any questions, go ahead and press 1. So let's kick things off tonight. The freight market has been phenomenal. I mean, amazing. And, you know, I'm seeing it in all segments. All of our flatbed guys, obviously, the flatbed market never slowed down for the wintertime. The spring season has really ramped things up even more. If you look at the trends in the flatbed market, obviously they are leading the pack right now. The flatbed open deck segment, flatbed step deck, RGN, specialty, that has been leading the pack. And so I'll go back to DAT trend lines and just kind of read off some of these reports from from a month ago. 4 weeks ago, we were in the flatbed market, $2.64. 3 weeks ago, $2.65. Last week, a week ago, $2.72. And the most recent report as of 5/12, which was Saturday, $2.71 per mile on average across the country nationwide. That is phenomenal for a flatbed. Phenomenal. Those are record rates. We have not seen those rates to be consistent like that. I mean, you always have your spikes here and there, but those record rates, phenomenal, just sticking it out on the flatbed market. Now, I led with them because those are the ones that I'm not getting any whiners from. The flatbed guys are killing it, and they know it. They can go anywhere, and they can fall into a pile of cash, and they know it. So that's an easy one, right? Let's go to the next one. Reefer segment. 4 weeks ago, $2.42 per mile. 3 weeks ago, $2.42 per mile. Holding consistent. Now, remember, this is just when the springtime 4 weeks ago is just getting started. 2 weeks ago, $2.48 per mile on the national average. Last week, as of 5/12, $2.49. Inched up another penny last week for the reefer market. We'll get into why that is here in a few minutes. Now, here's where I'm getting some of the complainers. The van market. The vans, 4 weeks ago, national average, $2.16 per mile. 3 weeks ago, $2.16 per mile. 2 weeks ago, $2.18 per mile. Those are some awesome, awesome numbers. Last week, dropped a little to $2.15 per mile. National averages. So let me preface the rest of this show with this comment. $2.15 per mile was a national average last week, which means there are certainly places that are paying much higher rates than that. And of course, there are some places that are paying lower than that. The average, $2.15 per mile. Now, for 2016, well, let's go back. 2015 to 2016 to 2017. People that pulled vans were begging for $2.15 per mile. Never thought we would see over $2 a mile. I remember just waiting for the time that the rates on average inched up over that $2 benchmark. And we have been consistently since the beginning of the year well over and at $2.15 per mile, which is the national average last week. At no point in 2015, 16, or 17 did we have a consistent national average even above $2 per mile. But here we are the past 4 weeks and finishing off slightly lower at $2.15, but $2.18 before that, $2.16, $2.16. Phenomenal, phenomenal rates. What are people complaining about exactly? Let me tell you what they're complaining about. Some of the comments, just pulling it off of the Facebook group. One of them said they've been sitting in Dexter, Michigan, just outside of Detroit, just near Ann Arbor, sitting in Dexter, Michigan, at the TA or the pilot truck stop right there. They've been sitting there for 2 or 3 days waiting because the market is dead. They said there is no freight worth hauling out of that market. Now, the freight market out of that area has actually still been pretty good. Probably the slowest market in the whole country right now. It's still pretty good. 2 years ago, to get the rates that they're offering right now, anybody with a van would have jumped on those rates. Anybody would have just, gone out of their way to get the rates they're offering right now. But they're not quite at that national average. Remember, an average means all the high ones and all the low ones are combined, and that's the point where they're in the middle. So $2.15 on average right now. And obviously, the slowest market in the country is the Midwest, further north into Michigan. So the Ann Arbor, Metro Detroit area, Kalamazoo, Michigan area, Grand Rapids area is the slowest market in the country right now. You can still do well out of there. If you find yourself going into those markets, take your backhaul with you and get out. Get your money going in, get what you can coming out, and get out of there. The market is still good. You can still average that $2.15 per mile, which is fantastic for a van, but you have to know where you're going. Now, for those of you that are sitting in Dexter, Michigan right now, let me tell you this. If you needed to make $2 or $2.50 per mile today, that means tomorrow, to generate the same bottom dollar revenue, the same money in your pocket, you would have to make nearly twice as much. So if you can't get $2.50 per day, what makes you think you can get $5 tomorrow? Or if you work on the daily rate, if you need $300 or $500, whatever your minimum daily rate is, if you can't get that minimum daily rate plus your mileage today, what makes you think you'll be able to get double that tomorrow? Cut your losses and get out of there. Take what you can get and get out of there. If you went in there for lower than your average with the load coming out, if that average is lower than the national average, you shot yourself in the foot because you didn't know what you were doing. You have to do your research if you're going to be in this business. A few weeks ago, the market was booming across the whole country. It was absolutely phenomenal across the whole country. Right now, we have some very regional spikes. Just checking in some of these messages here. Now, for those of you that are watching, I prefer that you call in if you have any questions. If you have anything like you'd like to add or say about this, please call the number at the bottom of the screen, 917-889-9924. If you're on the phones now, and if you'd like to add anything, press 1. Once you get on the phone lines, press number 1 on your keypad. That will raise your hand, and Elizabeth will get you in the call screening queue, and I will bring you on the line. All right, so I want to go back to vans. I really want to focus on vans. Obviously, I don't need to help the flatbed guys. They're killing it. They don't need to know what they're doing. They can pretty much go anywhere. I don't need to help the reefer guys, although the markets tend to follow the reefers right along with vans because they are the most direct competition with each other. So you have to understand this. Reefers are killing it too. Reefers aren't complaining much. The vans are the ones that are complaining. So let's get into a little bit more detail as to why. So I'm on the DAT trend lines right now. This is a free report from DAT. And we're going to check the vans load to truck ratios specifically. Now, average fuel prices, it shows right on the top, $3.24 per gallon, which is up 2.2% week over week. That's an increase. So we saw a decrease in the average rates with an increase in the price of fuel, which is a double whammy. So the decrease in rates was actually more than just 3 pennies. It was probably closer to, it was 2.2%, probably closer to 4.5, 5 cents a mile on average. That being said, the average rates across the country are still looking pretty good. Texas load to truck ratio for the whole state of Texas, 5.5 loads for every truck. That means if every truck took a load out of there, every truck that's in the state took a load out, there would still be about 4.5 loads sitting on the dock. There are more loads than trucks. Name your price. Florida, same thing. More than 5.5 loads a truck. This tops out at 5.5. It could be 10 loads of the truck. It could be who knows what. The market, just going off the market map. And I start with the market map. For those of you that are familiar with what I'm talking about, it's basically a map of the United States, just a heat map. The darker the color, the better the market is in favor of the trucks, in favor of the carriers. Florida is red hot right now. Texas, red hot right now. Louisiana, better than 5.5 loads per truck. Red hot right now. Mississippi, better than 5.5 loads per truck. Red hot right now. Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee. Let's see, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, South Dakota. All of those states are better than 5.5 loads per truck right now. We'll go up the East Coast here. I mentioned Virginia, North Carolina, West Virginia, same thing. Ohio, same thing. Pennsylvania, same thing. New York, load to truck ratio, 5.5 plus. Now, these are the average for all of last week. These are phenomenal load to truck ratios. Where do we start seeing a dip? So as we're going up, I mentioned Tennessee is a hot market. Kentucky starts to see a slight dip. Still fantastic. 2.6 to 5.4 range. That's just 30,000 foot view off the hot market map. 2.6 to 5.4. Now, a lot of people will say these maps are inaccurate because brokers will blast out, if they have one load, they'll post it 3 times. I agree that there is a margin of error, and I'll tell you where I have found that margin of error to be. Right around 3-to-1 trucks. If you are looking at the van and you are seeing 3-to-1, you are in a good market. Kentucky, 2.6 to 5.4 is the range. You are in a good market in Kentucky. Let's go up here. Indiana, 2.6 to 5.4. Illinois, 2.6 to 5.4. Because these states are surrounded with the 5.5 plus markets, so Illinois surrounded by Iowa, which is better than 5.5 loads to truck. Missouri, better than 5.5 loads to the truck. Arkansas, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, all better than 5.5 loads per truck. Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, slightly lower at 2.6 to 5.4. You are still in a phenomenal market because the surrounding markets are going to suck those trucks away too. You're still in a great market. Wisconsin, same thing, 2.6 to 5.4. Now, I started in the southern states, and I hope you see a trend there. I started in the South because the South is rocking right now. The South is killing it with the market. The South is phenomenal. We'll get into that in just a minute as to why. But I was talking specifically about a truck sitting in Dexter, Michigan. The load to truck ratio in Dexter, Michigan, 2.6 to 5.4. Still better than most of the time throughout 2015, 16, and 17. We're still seeing a better market in the worst market in the country than we were in all of the past 3 years. That says a lot. The load to truck ratio going back for 3 months. Now, all of this information I'm giving you is free. I'm just giving you my spin on it and a little bit of my experience and how to interpret this information. But it's all DAT trend lines, and I find it to be very, very accurate. And I'm going to get into some of the discrepancies and why people don't necessarily believe this information and why it is an extremely valuable tool here in just a minute. In January, when we saw these record-setting rates, when reefers were up at $3 a mile and vans were up over $2.50 per mile for a week or two, January, for the national averages, we were seeing 10-to-1 load to truck ratios on a national average. Now, going back 2017, it was, and I'm just roughly guesstimating here, it's roughly 3-to-1 in that same time period in 2017. 2016 was roughly 2-to-1. Now let's jump up to February, the next mark on the gauge here. We're at roughly 7 loads for every truck across the country in February. Compare that with back 2017. We were at about 2.5 loads per truck across the market, across the country. Almost 2.5 times more freight to move in February. Let's go back a year before that, 2016. We were roughly 1.5, looking at this graph, roughly 1.5 loads to every truck. Remember, I said 3-to-1 is a good market. February in 2016, we saw 1.5-to-1. There were probably more trucks available than there were loads in most of the markets. Let's jump up to March. March 2018, last month, we were at 7 loads for every truck. Now, March 2018, we were seeing some of the most consistent freight rates out there, still setting records, still better than at any point in 2015, 16, or 17. Let's compare that to March of 2017. We were at roughly 3 loads to truck. We were just getting into the springtime market last year in March, just getting into a market that was decent for vans. We were still more than double that market March this year. April 2018, we are seeing roughly 6.5 loads, maybe even 7 loads to every truck. And I'm just trying to interpret the graph here. 6.5 to 7 loads to every truck across the country right now. That is a phenomenal number. 2017, we were at about 3. Right around 3. Still less than half the available volume of freight across the country. 2016, even worse. 2016, we were right around 1.5 to 2 loads per truck in April. Spring just starts to spring. Okay, spring has sprung now. We are in April, full steam ahead in April. Rates are phenomenal right now. We're currently at 6.6. And if we look at the trends, we're probably going to see this plateau, and we are going to see this level out in the 6 to 6.5 loads per truck on average. We're currently sitting for 2018 at 6.6 loads per truck, national average. Now, these are vans across the country. That is phenomenal. Now, let's just go back for the 4 weeks previously. Again, all this information is free on DAT Trendlines. Now, we leveled out last week at $2.15 per mile, week ending 5/12. National average was 6.4 loads to the truck last week. The week before that was actually a higher rate per mile on average, $2.18 per mile, but we only had 2.6, I'm sorry, dyslexia there, 6.2 loads per truck the week prior. Rates were higher. Demand was actually lower. We had higher rates. 6.1 the previous week and back up to 6.4 4 weeks ago. So we're hovering at between 6 and 6.5 loads per truck across the country, and the rates are climbing. Now, why are the rates climbing this past week? I keep saying we're going to get back to that, and we will. If any of you have any questions or comments, we have several callers on the line now, and several of you watching the live stream. If you have anything you'd like to add, please jump in. I see one of the comments I want to address here in just a moment. I have a few comments I want to address here because this is exactly what I was looking for. All right, and we are going to address these things here in just a minute. I knew I was going to get these types of comments, and I'm looking forward to addressing this. So, I'm going to keep going with the DAT trend lines. Again, all free information. Now, I'm going to click on some national rates right now. Last week, national rates for vans, the Atlanta market was $2.42 per mile on average. The Philadelphia market, $2.06 per mile on average. Chicago, $2.42 a mile, right there with Atlanta. Dallas, Texas, $2.06 a mile, right there with Philadelphia. And Los Angeles, $2.45 per mile. Now, I throw those out there because the national averages that we were talking about before take into account all of the good and bad markets. But this shows you a little bit more detail about the specific regional markets. Now, that being said, you have to be a little careful with what these numbers mean, and you have to be able to interpret. You have to be able to interpret these and what they mean to your market. So let's look at Atlanta at $2.42 per mile. Now, remember, $2.15 per mile is what we finished the week at on a national average. Philadelphia and Dallas at $2.06 are below that, but they're not low enough to offset $2.42 out of Atlanta and Chicago and still come out at $2.15, $2.45 in Los Angeles. So what does that mean? Philadelphia is $2.06 per mile, but all of the Northeast trucks tend to come into the Philadelphia market to get loads out. Dallas, 206 per mile. Further south from Dallas, we have all of the freight coming across, the produce coming across the border from Mexico. So actually the Dallas market north of Dallas is probably lower than 206. And the surrounding market with all the trucks coming into Dallas and into Texas last week probably drove the 206 down from where it would have been the previous week. And those trucks are trying to get along the southern border to get the produce coming out. Now, Los Angeles is $2.45 per mile. Now, Los Angeles is a little bit misleading because most of that freight in Los Angeles tends to run up and down the West Coast. Very little of that goes back east. So trucks running coast to coast are not seeing those kind of rates. If you're in Los Angeles and you're willing to go into some of the more desolate areas, such as the Seattle market, you're going to see great rates out of LA, averaging 245. But if you're looking to go west, or I'm sorry, looking to go east out of Los Angeles, you're going to have a hard time getting those kind of fantastic rates out of LA. That being said, LA and San Diego area are right on the line of where a lot of that produce coming across the Mexican border going up the West Coast are going to hit. So there is still a significant volume there. All right, so now all of that information is absolutely free information from the DAT Trendlines reports. Now I'm going to log into my DAT subscription and I'm going to pull up a little bit more detail to try to share some of the information that I'm seeing on my end. All right, so currently, now that information that I just gave you from Trendlines was all of last week on average, okay? Now I can look, if you have a subscription to the load boards, even the lower end, you can see the state-by-state averages. If you have the higher end, DAT Power and so forth, you can see regional and market averages. So I can see in Miami currently, we're at 5.6 to 1. 2,924 loads posted to 519 trucks posted. So that's a phenomenal number. Miami is a great market to be in. The Lakeland market is slightly lighter, 3,753 loads posted with only 702 trucks posted. Now these are the averages from 24 hours ago yesterday. Florida is probably one of the hottest markets in the country currently, this is the only time of year that I would ever be able to say that. Now let's look at McAllen, Texas, the southern tip of Texas. 8.5 loads to truck. Now that being said, the volume isn't quite there for the area. Only a little over 1,000 loads posted and 125 trucks posted. So it's a hot market, not quite as much volume, but you're still in a great area if you are along the border looking to get out. The Laredo market, even better really because of the volume, 6.8 loads to the truck as of yesterday, 3,677 loads posted to 544 trucks posted. The El Paso market, right along the Mexican border here, 5.6 to 1, 736 to 132. So the volume isn't quite as high as you get into western Texas. Now we'll look at that Austin market, way lower, 2.4 to 1. Remember I said when I'm looking at a van, I'm looking at 3 to 1 is really what I want to be in, the markets that you know you're in a good spot. But if you're in Austin, chances are the Austin market is going to suck the trucks in, or the Laredo and McAllen markets will suck the trucks out of the Austin market to haul this freight here. Awesome. You're in a good spot if you're in Austin, but don't plan on picking up in Austin. Dallas-Fort Worth area, 3.8. In the Dallas market, on the west side of Dallas-Fort Worth, 4.8. You're still in a good market in Dallas-Fort Worth, but if you can find a run that'll get you further south if you have a van and get you into the Laredo market, that's probably the best way to go. All right, so I went over some rates, I went over some markets. Let's use this information on how you would dispatch a truck. And let me address some of these questions first. All right. And if any of you have any comments, if you'd like to call in, I would love to hear your voice, and I would love to hear you explain this. But I'm going to read the comments from the Facebook group here. So Curtis says 350 trucks in a 50-mile radius of Cleveland and only 80 loads to go anywhere in a 50-mile radius. Last week, the bottom fell out, and this week starting the same. Okay. LA sounds like it's doing good right now, but I'm more curious about Sacramento, seeing as I live in the greater Sacramento area. Okay, that's also good to know. We're going to come back to those. Why are loads so cheap in Arizona? All right, we'll come back to that too. And Scott asked about California, and I did mention California. All right. So Curtis said, Ohio is hot. Now, he's the same one that made the comment before here. 350 trucks in a 50-mile radius of Cleveland. Ohio is hot. You're joking, right? Okay, so let's go back here to the hot market maps. Now, Ohio, and he said the Cleveland market. Ohio is not hot. And I don't recall saying that Ohio is hot. So we'll talk about the numbers specifically here. Let me see. You said that in the Cleveland market. Let me look at the Cleveland market specifically. The Cleveland market, 2.7 to 1. 2,350 loads posted as of yesterday, 861. 2.7 to 1. Remember, I would not call a market that's less than 3 to 1 a good market. So if you're in Cleveland, you are not in a good market. Take what you can get and get out of there. The Columbus market, 2.7 as well. The Toledo market. Okay, so now, the Toledo market is 4.1 loads to trucks. 1,150 on the loads posted, 282 trucks posted. If you're in the Cleveland market, start looking at Toledo. Now, Erie market. The Erie, Pennsylvania market, 7.7 loads, 355 loads to 46 trucks posted. If you are in Cleveland, if you can't find your rate out of there, look at the Toledo market, look at the Erie market. Figure out what you have to do. Forget about your deadhead. Those need to be included miles. If you dispatch yourself into Cleveland and you can't get an average rate out of there, then you shot yourself in the foot going in. You should have done this research before you got there. Same thing, I'm looking at, let me go up to the Detroit market, 1.2 to 1. Horrible. I mentioned Michigan is one of the worst in the whole country. Obviously, if Michigan is that bad, obviously if Michigan is the worst, why would Ohio be a good market? You have to look at the surrounding markets as well. Michigan, 1.2 to 1, 1,100 loads, but only 936 trucks posted. It's a horrible market to be in. Get out of there. Don't sit and wait. It's not going to get any better sitting and waiting. 2.7 to 1 in Western Michigan, Grand Rapids market. You got to get out of there. If you're in Cleveland and you're complaining about rates, why are you there? Why did you take a horrible rate going in if you can't get a load coming out? This is the type of stuff I'm talking about. You have to do your research before you book a load. Before you dispatch yourself into any market, you have to know what the market is like, where you're going. So the Michigan market is bad. If you get a good rate going into Michigan, plan on taking a cheap load out or deadhead to a better market, but take your backhaul with you. Get a good rate going into these markets. Now, I determine that looking at this hot market map off of DAT. Again, this is the 30,000 foot view. I don't put a lot of faith in this, but I do know that it's accurate enough that if it's that bad on this map, if I look more specifically, it's not going to look any better. The Detroit market at 1.2, I know right off the bat without doing any more research, I am not going to plan on going to Detroit unless I can get a phenomenal rate going there or some significant miles on a very good rate. The Erie market, I would consider it, but looking at that area, the volume and everything, the surrounding markets as well, Erie market itself is pretty good, but that region is not fantastic. So I would look at moving out of there as well too. I would plan on a good rate going in before I booked a load going there. Now, if any of you don't understand the logic behind that, please raise your hand, press 1 on your keypad, or drop a comment in the Facebook group. All right, so let me go to this comment. Where did it go here? So Anthony says, what do you feel about these DAT truck load ratios? I personally feel they are a joke. Brokers are posting loads 5, 10, if not 15 times for one load, just changing the pickup location with the same load. Okay, well, here's the thing. They do that all the time. They do that year round. They do that every day of the year. So this is a gauge, and it's got a margin of error, and the margin of error is going to be the same year round all the time. I already mentioned I like to look at a van market at 3 to 1. If it's 3 to 1 with a van, that's what I would consider a decent market, because with vans, you're not seeing quite as much of the double and triple posted loads. You see more of that with produce. This time of year, you see a lot more of that because there's a lot of watermelons and so forth running out of the south, but the south markets are still fantastic. I personally feel they're a joke. Brokers posting those 5, 10. Now, my other question is, what about trucks that post their trucks more than once? I post my truck 3 or 4 different times. I live in Orlando. I live in Apopka, Florida. If you don't know where Apopka, Florida is, it's in Orlando, near Orlando. So I'll post it as Apopka, Florida. My phone rarely rings. But if I post it as Orlando, all of a sudden the phone blows up. So I'll post it as Apopka and Orlando. I'll also post it in Tampa, Jacksonville, Valdosta, Georgia, Ocala, Lake City sometimes, because those are all on the way out. Don't you? And if not, why? Do you have an excuse why you wouldn't do that? Now, I also post it in Florida this time of year. I'll post it as a van. I'll also post it again as a vented van. Elizabeth and I run as a team occasionally, so I will post it as a solo truck. I'll also post it as a team truck. I'll also post it all those ways in all those different markets. Don't you? If not, why? If you're not getting any phone calls, if your phone's not ringing, why aren't you doing a little more hard work? Why aren't you posting your truck? Why aren't you putting other markets, putting other feelers out there? The brokers do it. You pointed it out yourself. They post a load 5, 10, 15 times, not even on the same areas. Now, I will tell you another secret that the brokers do. The brokers that have a lot of volume of freight, the mega brokers out there, they don't post loads at all. That's why when you call on some of these, they say, oh, we don't have that load, but we have a different load that's similar. Because they don't post a load at all. I happen to know for a fact that one of the mega brokers has software that does this for them. So every morning that phone operator will come in and they will sit at the phone and the phone will start ringing on every load coming out of the lane that they're assigned to. So they'll sit down at the Orlando, Florida to Ohio, Michigan, Midwest phone. That'll be the region that they're calling on. And that phone will just start ringing and it will keep ringing because the computer automatically posted a lane. They didn't post loads. They posted Orlando to Cincinnati, Orlando to Toledo, Orlando to Dayton, Ohio, Orlando to Detroit, Orlando to Grand Rapids, Orlando to Chicago. They posted all of that. Then it posted Tampa to Toledo, Tampa to Cincinnati, Tampa to Dayton. It automatically comes in. And when you call and you say, I'm interested in that load from Orlando to Cincinnati, they say, well, we don't have that, but we do have one from Gainesville, Florida to Wilmington, Ohio. Not quite the same, but it's close. You're going on that lane. That's the lane you're calling on, and it works for them. If you own a truck, why aren't you doing the same? Why aren't you trying to find work for your truck? So what you need to do is learn how to use this information and learn how to work the load boards in your favor. If you're working off of board freight, off of spot market load board freight, working with brokers, you have to do the marketing to get it out there. You have to do what it takes to let your customers know you're available everywhere. Why don't you? The tools are available. Use them. Don't complain if you can't find the rates. Don't complain if you find yourself in a bad market and you didn't get the rates going in. You have the opportunity to do all the research. And frankly, if you're not doing the research, you're ruining it for the rest of us, because the whole comment about cheap freight, everybody says that, don't take cheap freight, say no to cheap freight. I will take freight at the market rates. You know what drives the market rates down? People that don't know what the market rates are. People that haven't done the research. People that don't know the load to truck ratios. People that don't understand the seasonal effects and the trends that happen every single year. Why are rates good in Florida right now? Rates are fantastic in Florida right now. Why is that? Because it's melon season. It's harvest season, and there's more freight to go on box trucks, be it reefer or van, than there are trucks to go around. So the rates come up. That's just how it works. And you know what happens? Every March, April, May timeframe, it's melon season. Every single year. I am stupefied by all of these things about why is the Florida... There's somebody made a comment in here right now. Why are the Florida brokers paying better? Because there are more loads than there are trucks. And Anthony says it's all nonsense, sir. Supply and demand is not nonsense. Supply and demand is absolutely not nonsense. That's how the market works. If there are more loads than trucks, they pay better. Do you know how you find out where there are more loads than trucks? You use the tools. You use what's available to you. All right. Went on a little bit of a rant there, and I apologize. All right. If you have anything you'd like to add, I know I'm probably stirring the pot a little. I'm sure a lot of you are fuming because I'm kind of getting a little pointed with my discussion here. So those of you that are listening, if you'd like to call in, numbers at the bottom of your screen, 917-889-9924. Once you get on the line, press number 1. Looks like we have a couple of calls on the line. I can see one of them is from here in Orlando. One of them is from Michigan. So let's see what they have to say, and I'll let Elizabeth screen those calls first, and we'll see where we're going with that. All right. Now, again, all of those tools, the hot market map, the trend lines, the general market map that you'll see from trend lines for the week averages, those are free. If you have the most basic version of the DAT load board, the hot market map is included. The higher levels are going to show you more specific details. I like to take it a step further than that. So I mentioned that, and I'm going to do a live search for you right now. I mentioned that there's a truck sitting in Dexter, Michigan right now. I grew up near Dexter, Michigan. It's where I'm from. I used to drive through Dexter, Michigan almost every single day going to work when I was just out of high school. So I'm very familiar with the area. Dexter, Ann Arbor, Manchester. Very familiar with that area. So let's look at Dexter, Michigan. How many loads are coming out for vans within 150 miles today? And I'm going to search back for the past 8 hours. Go back to about noon. So I see that there are currently still posted 4,617 loads. 4,617 loads available in Michigan. Within 150 miles of Dexter, should be pretty much the entire South Michigan area. 4,617 loads. Let's flip this search around, see how many loads are delivering there. Wow. 8,403 loads will be delivering in Michigan. So, more relevant and more accurate than load to truck postings is inbound and outbound ratios. So forget about how many trucks did or didn't post. Forget about how many brokers double, triple, quadruple posted their loads. Forget about that. Let's compare apples to apples. Loads posted in and loads posted out. How many do we have? Because That will tell you not only what the market is like currently right now, but the loads that are posted delivering there are going to show you 2 and 3 and 4 days ahead. So the loads posted right now, 8,403 loads posted that are set to deliver within 150 miles of Dexter, Michigan, the TA truck stop in Dexter, Michigan. Over 8,400 loads. Let's flip that around again. 4,617 loads, nearly half. That means there are almost 2 truckloads headed to Michigan right now, and there's only one load for each one of those trucks currently right now. I did that in just a matter of seconds. You could do this with the most inexpensive load board. It doesn't matter if it's the 1, 2, 3 load board. Doesn't matter if it's the truck stop, DAT, whatever load board you want to use. Inbound and outbound searches. You can see exactly how many loads are posted going in and exactly how many are posted going out. Doesn't matter the commodity, doesn't matter the type, volume, anything. But we can see the dates, the time, all that. None of that matters. In to out ratio is nearly double. We're taking nearly twice as many loads in, which means tomorrow there will be twice as many trucks going in there looking for a load, and half of those trucks are going to have a load coming out. The rest of them are out of luck. What does that mean? It means if you're going to Michigan, take your backhaul with you, because half of you won't be getting a load back out. Doesn't matter if all of those trucks were willing to haul the loads out for free, half of you will be leaving empty because there are not enough loads to go around. And I did that in a matter of minutes to be able to see exactly what my load to truck ratios are. Let's do the same thing with Florida. Let me pull my same search up. I'm going to edit this search. We're going to look at, let's see, Arcadia, Florida is where most of the melons are coming out right now. There's a big farm down there. Arcadia, Mayaca City, Punta Gorda, even Immokalee, Alva. All of those just off the coast, inside of the I-75 corridor in Florida. We're going to look how many are leaving there within 150 miles. 150 miles to get you pretty much across the state. Maybe I'll even stretch that out a little further. 2,415 loads posted leaving within 150 miles. Pretty much, I would guarantee the majority of those are going to be watermelon loads. And I can see some of the rates are actually posted here, and I'm seeing some pretty decent rates actually posted without even calling to negotiate. I see right here, Fort Myers to New Jersey, posted at 2,800. I'm sure that they can come up from there. This might even be a co-brokered load based on who the broker is here. Looks like the average rates are right at $2,998 on that lane, $247 per mile on the lane. They posted it at $2,800. I'm sure they have a couple $100 in it that you can negotiate up and get $247 out of Florida into New Jersey. And from New Jersey, you'd probably need to look and see what you can do from there. So here's what I would do. We know that there are 2,415 loads leaving Florida right now. Currently, inbound to Florida, loads that are delivering in the Southwest Florida area, 1,088. So this is just a flip of what we saw in Michigan. There are an abundance of loads ready to go in Southwest Florida right now, and there are only half as many trucks on their way there. There are 2 loads for every truck posted right now. Right now. Doesn't matter if those trucks post their truck or not. If those trucks inbound are posting their truck or where they're going with that freight, doesn't matter, because we know that the loads delivering, there's half as many delivering as there are picking up. And that's going to take into account the brokers that double, triple, quadruple post those loads. So that's a good market to be in. And I'm just looking at some of the rates. I mean, I just pull this up and just look at some of the top loads that are posted, and I'm just in awe of the fantastic opportunities out there. I don't understand where anybody is complaining. All right. All right, and forgive me, I'm trying to read these comments as I'm going here. All right, we're going to jump on some phone calls. And we'll wrap up the show with these last few calls. So those of you that are on the line now, or those of you that are watching that you haven't called in yet, you've got 8 minutes before the phone lines close. If you're on the line when the lines close, I will get to your questions or comments. Anybody that presses 1 before 8 o'clock, I will get to you. And we will wrap up the show with some of these phone calls. Now, before I take call, just want to say you've got to do your research. You have to know the markets. You have to know where the markets are hot, where they're not. You have to know before you book a load, before you start looking at load boards, before you start calling brokers or letting brokers call you, do the research. I know there's a lot of people that like to post their trucks and let the brokers call them. They feel that they're have an advantage in the negotiation. I don't necessarily agree with that. If the broker was posting a load, they're already reaching out to you. So I don't necessarily agree that you have any more leverage one way or the other. That being said, if a broker calls you and you have not done your research and they call you at the lane that you're not familiar with, what will you do? Chances are they have the advantage because they will be able to get what they want. And you may even hang up the phone, happy as can be, until you realize what you just booked because you didn't do your research. Then you're the type of person that sits in Dexter, Michigan, complaining that you can't find a load out. So that's the type of person that needs to do your research. The first thing you do before you start looking for loads is do the research on the market. All right. I can see that some of these questions are going to change the subject a little. I'll take these top 2 first, and let's see if that keeps us in line. We'll go to James in Michigan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Kenny, how's it going?
Hey, James, how are you? Remember, watch your language. Last time you were on here, we had to cut you off.
Yeah. I'll be quiet, I promise. I'll be good. So I don't know why anybody's complaining about Michigan. I just booked a load for $3.68 a mile heading back to Brooklyn.
Okay, and where was it? Was going to Brooklyn. Now, let's examine that a little closer. So you're in Michigan, booking something going to Brooklyn. So right off the bat, we've got a good friend.
Actually, I was starting out in New York, going to Michigan, and then back from Michigan back to Brooklyn.
Okay, all right, awesome. Well, we've got a friend that calls in here, Mike, and he called in a few weeks ago, and he said his thing is garbage, crap, and bees in New York City. Okay, so you're going to New York City, you're doing the stuff that nobody else wants to do. And so it does pay a premium to do that, which is awesome. So if you find yourself in one of these poor markets, then do something that nobody else wants to do. Haul the stuff out of there that nobody else can haul. Do what nobody else can do. Go to Brooklyn, New York. And it sounds like you're getting paid well to do it. And I'm sure there are a lot of people listening right now that are already, when you first said that, before I even made a comment, that you're going to New York City, I won't do that. I won't go to New York. And those are the same people that are sitting there for 2 or 3 days, and they're complaining.
I've got a new driver that won't do that, and one of my main brokers is yelling and screaming at him to just go in and grab something because he's got great paying loads out of the Brooklyn, New York City area. And they're lightweight loads. I mean, the load I'm taking out is 14,000 pounds, and the load I'm taking back is 20,000 pounds. Awesome. So I'm not, but a lot of it is I've got a broker. The moment I sees my truck posted on the DAT load board, he's blowing up mine or my other driver's phones, going, "What do you mean you got your truck posted? I've got this load for you. Why are you posting your truck?"
Yeah. Well, now we're going back on relationships.
He keeps us busy.
Relationships say a lot too.
Yes.
When you get into these markets. The relationships that you have built when you're in a poor market. Now, I say that to say this. Right now, we're seeing these regional markets shifting and some areas that are slowing down, and the relationships help there. I will tell you, I don't have a crystal ball to know when, but the market that we're in right now is phenomenal. It will end. All good things must end. At some point in the future, these great rates are going to drop. And when that happens, what will you all do? One of my drivers not too long ago was called a rate-chasing cowboy. Okay? And the rate-chasing cowboys will be remembered. And when this market shifts, they will be forgotten about.
See, our broker, the one broker we use, he's our relationship with him. He's already put offers in on loads to inside of his the brokerage firm that he does before he even calls us to go, hey, I've got these 3 that I put offers in, knowing what your rates are for these markets that you use anyways. So he's already got stuff pre-staged ready for us to figure out which direction we want to go. And it keeps the 3 of us busy 98% of the time.
Awesome. And that says a lot. And when you find yourself in these areas where others are struggling to get out, and you have a broker that you've built a relationship that calls you first, that says a lot. And that will really make the cream rise to the top. It really does make a big difference. So with that,
I live in Washington State, and rates right now for the last couple of months have sucked. And because of the broker, I've been able to get out of Washington State for right about $2 a mile every time I've been home the last couple of months.
Awesome. That's good. That's phenomenal that you're building those relationships. And then when you pay attention to the markets and you know where you're going and what you can ask for to get in and out of these markets, it makes a big, big difference. Now, if you build a relationship with a broker in what could be a bad market, and then it's always easy. For example, it's always easy to get into Florida, except this time of year. But if you can build a relationship with a broker that can get you in and out and still get decent rates both directions, or if you can do even better and find a broker in a bad area that can get you out when you know it's easy to get back in, then absolutely, that's a win-win for everybody.
And I'm not one of those that sits there and tries to bend them over the barrel on a run or a load. I'd rather have the long-term relationship because it's going to save my backside and my other driver's backside when it comes to the slow time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, I am going to throw you back on hold. I appreciate the call, James. We do have, this happens every week.
60 seconds.
Pay no attention to the voice on the phone. The phone lines will be closing in just less than 1 minute. I will get to the rest of these calls here. You won't be able, nobody else will be able to call in, but I will be able to go over time and get these questions asked. And then I have a few more comments on Facebook I wanted to address as well. That being said, let's go to Stuart in Florida. Stuart, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kenny. How you doing this evening?
Fantastic.
Awesome. Yes, I was just listening to what you had to say there. And I'm just going to put my 2 cents in. I think it's almost comical sometimes to me that some people are absolutely loving life with the way
10 seconds,
and then some people are griping about it and bitching about it and whatever else, and how difficult it is. And it makes me sit back and think and well, we all have the same tools. What are people doing differently? Why is that? And the only conclusion I can come down to at this point is just some people don't know how to read the data. We all have that tool and that data put in front of us, but if you don't know how to analyze what you're reading, we can just sit here and spin our wheels all day long, right?
I agree.
And for me, I think that's where the biggest issue is we might be able to drive the hell out of a truck, but if you don't have that understanding of supply and demand and business savvy to understand what's going to happen when watermelons are being picked and distributed, you're just gonna lose money hand over fist, right?
Absolutely.
And I think for me, that's where the biggest failure is in this industry. Is there's not enough showing how to, to research where you want to go, and what you want to do, and actually read that data and make heads or tails of it. Some people are just naturally gifted and can understand that, and others, just can't do that. And the perfect example I like to use is buying fuel at the right price before the tax price, to get your best price. Some people just don't understand that. But as soon as you sit down and show them that you can see the penny drop, and I think it's the same with this particular subject. As soon as you sit down and talk to someone and show them, what's going on, the penny clicks, right?
Right.
and then it's a whole different ballgame. And I think for me, that was, when I first started out, understanding the freight lanes and what happens. Now it makes sense to me of what I need to be doing to get them better rates, and that sort of just helped me big time. Absolutely helped me big time. Now I understand what I'm looking at. Before, it was a nice tool to have, But when I couldn't comprehend what I was reading, it made no difference to me to have that information, at the time. But now I actually understand it. I mean, last quarter alone, when I live in Florida and I come home every week, I'm averaging $2.11 a mile for the quarter, all miles. I mean, even running to the mechanic. For me, I think that's ecstatic, considering I'm coming to Florida every week, and so, I mean, I'm sure I'm probably leaving money on the table because I know I have a lot to learn, but for me, I'm happy about living in Florida,
Since the market has been awesome since, late last year, really, and I have been putting out the warning every show. I've been saying, be very careful. A lot of people are going out right now, buying trucks, getting their own authority, going into business, and trying to capitalize on this market because it is easy to fall out of the truck. I say this all the time. It's kind of a stupid saying, but fall out of the truck into a pile of money. Right now, it is easy. Those people are the ones that are bitching because they're in one of these slower areas and they didn't do the hard work and figure out where the market needs to be and where they need to position their trucks. And those people, when the market on a whole makes the turn on the bend here, we're going to see a lot of those people going out of business. And they're absolutely going to struggle and not understand why. They're just going to complain that the rates aren't good enough. And they're going to get one of those bumper stickers that says that they're not going to haul cheap freight. And they're going to complain, and they're going to complain all the way to the bank as they hand the keys to the banker that hauls their truck away. That's how it's going to work. A lot of people go out of business over this stuff.
I understand that. And the whole thing's a cheap freight, and I get the concept behind that. But, the way I look at it, if you're in an area and you've been sat there for a couple of days, surely you've lost more money than sitting there.
Absolutely.
By sitting there and taking the load. I mean, it's better to lose $1 a mile than $2, right?
Absolutely.
That's the way I look at it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm not a fan of taking cheap freight, and I'm going to do everything in my power to push that number up. I drive teams with my brother, and we say all the time, hey, if we can get above the 15-day average, all we're doing is helping everyone else because we're going
bringing
above.
that average
everyone
up.
Can go above that 15-day average and bringing the average up.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's
one of
what
the most
we ever try and do is just try and push that up.
One of the most ludicrous things that I've ever heard was when somebody told me everybody has to take freight above that national average. Let's think about that for a second. If everybody is taking freight higher than the national average, what does that do to the national average? Right?
Well,
so the average goes up. At what point, you can't it's just on an infinite number. If everybody just took freight, if it was, if the average today was $1.50 and everybody's did it for $1.51, and then tomorrow everybody does it for $1.52, eventually if that was the pattern, everybody'd be pulling freight for $1 million a mile. Okay, that doesn't work. So the average is what the average is. If you can do above average, phenomenal. But obviously there are people that are going to be working below average. Otherwise, we wouldn't have an average. So, but I agree with you. The goal should always be for everybody to get above that average. But you do have to know the market and know what that average is. A lot of people absolutely don't. So I completely agree with you. And, like I said earlier, and I put you back on hold there, Stuart. Like I said earlier, if you had to make $300 today to make ends meet, but you decided that you're not going to haul cheap freight, that means tomorrow you're going to have to make $600. If you can't make $300 today, how are you going to make $600 tomorrow? It's not going to work. So, and whatever your number is, maybe it's $2 a mile, $3 a mile, or maybe it's $1,000 a day, whatever, however you run your business. And I don't want to get into that part of it right now, but however you run your business, if you can't make your money today, what makes you think you're going to make double tomorrow to make up for it? You won't. You better cut bait and get out of there. So with that being said, I'm going to go to Bill in Michigan. Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, Kenny?
Awesome, Bill.
Hey, I
How can
love
I
your
help
show, man. I like the way you jump in and get into details and everything, and don't have a bunch of silly call-outs and all that happy stuff. So, really like your show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was calling basically to ask you. When I had my own authority back in 2010, I just jumped in green as turnip.
Right.
I didn't have any trucking experience at all, and I just jumped in as an owner-operator, and I bought a $3,500 truck and a $3,000 trailer, and I went trucking. So I was happy to get like $1.40 a mile back then,
Yeah.
about $1.30 a mile even, but things were pretty bad. But the thing I wanted to ask was what kind of stipulations are brokers putting on their your operation these days? Like, do they want to track your phone? And they always I know they wanted I mainly dealt with C.H. Robinson, and they always wanted a check call every now and then, and
Right.
I'd blow them off most of the time. But I thought I heard some people saying that. Well, I know I drove for a company a couple of years ago, and they were trying to get me to make it so they could track my telephone, but I was a company driver then. And are they doing that now? Are they?
Oh, yeah.
Are they telling you they need to be able to track you, or they're going to charge you, or something like that, or
Oh,
fine
yeah.
you?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so
Is that right?
yes.
So
Unfortunately,
does everybody fold and just do what they say, or what?
unfortunately, yes. And here's why. Most dispatchers, drivers, and so forth that are trying to negotiate rates, most of them don't know how to negotiate. Very, very, very few know anything about contracts, and most of the time when I talk to those people, the most common response to reading the fine print in the contract is, I don't need to do that. I've been signing these things for 30 years and it's never been a problem yet. And that tends to be, if they get the rate, and I've had even some of my drivers say, you know what, I don't care about any of the other details as long as the rate works. As long as I can get the rate that I want, that's the only thing that I care about. So that means they don't have anything to negotiate on, and none of the terms in the contract matter, and they don't care. So by and large,
Well, that was the most scariest thing when I got into this stuff was reading the contract.
oh yeah, the
They
contracts
totally
are horrible.
covered their butts, and they wanted to put as much responsibility on the carrier and the driver.
Yes.
And make them,
And
financially responsible for most everything they could throw into that
almost
contract.
everything. Every single contract that we get, every single one requires the red ink treatment. I cannot remember the last time that we could just sign a contract without noting some kind of the stipulations that we didn't agree with. Every single contract supplied by a broker. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but the best situation would be a broker that doesn't supply a contract at all. Somebody asked that in one of my Facebook groups about how a broker did not supply a contract, and what do they do? And a lot of people are saying, "Oh, you have to have a contract. Without a contract, you don't have any terms, whatever." Absolutely not. The best protection you can have is, the 49, United States Code 49, and the Carmack Amendment that stipulates how freight claims and losses and so forth, and how the brokers are supposed to pay. How all this stuff is regulated, and 99% of the wording in the broker-supplied contracts is to waive all of those federally guaranteed protections to carriers. That's why brokers give the contracts.
I noticed that.
Absolutely. So the best situation would be a broker that doesn't give you a contract at all. By default, you fall back on the laws, which are much more in favor of the carriers. Or even better, the carrier-supplied contract or the rules circular, which every carrier should have. Do you know how many carriers I talk to that have that?
Probably a lot of them don't even know what the heck you're talking about. I would imagine.
Yeah. Most carriers that I talk to don't have any form of, I get questions all the time. Can I see copies of your contracts? Can I see copies of this, and that? No. Go find your own. I'm all for helping people out, but I've spent a lot of time and money.
How can you sign up for something without reading the contract?
Absolutely. And so we redline all kinds of stuff. I've done several shows about what to look for in contracts. So that being said,
I listened to some of those.
Yeah, that being said,
I wanted to ask about that. I can't come to mind right now, but
well, that's kind of where I'm going with this, though. Right now, a lot of, and kind of to stem off of what I was talking about with the last caller, a lot of new owner-operators getting into the business. Drivers buying the truck for the first time, or owner-operators getting their authority for the first time, dealing with brokers for the first time. A lot of people are getting into the business right now. Because there are so many new people that the brokers are preying on the fact that if you don't like my contract or you don't like my terms, I will just I'll just find the next truck. I will just give it to somebody else.
Right. I was gonna say, how much kickback do you get when you send back a redlined document? A redline contract.
Which it's a little backwards to me right now, because in a market like this, it is carriers are in the more favored here. They should be able to negotiate harder, not just on the rate, but on the contracts as well. But brokers know. Now, the flow of money is kind of where this all comes from. Brokers, the shippers and receivers and things, they're stretching out their days to pay because freight rates are a lot higher. A lot of brokers are cutting their margins closer than they have in a long time because they've been on contract rates, and they can only get so much out of it. So they're stretching. You know, I look at my aging reports, and I'm seeing brokers, their days to pay are getting further and further out because of their, you know, getting further and further out on the money and everything. They're being harder and harder and harder on the contracts. And because most of the wording in the contracts is, you know, favored to the broker keeping more of that money. Late fees, you know, claims where they hold everything. More carriers have been put out of business over bad contracts than anything. And that
And I'm wondering how much a one-man operation can, you know, expect them to change their contract for even if it is something unreasonable that it seems like, you know.
Well, they can still do it for some of the really unreasonable stuff, but they're losing a lot of their leverage because the brokers right now they're already in some cases losing money, and they're not willing to take any more risk than that. And more carriers only care about the rate. That's all they care about. They don't even care what the load is. Most of the time, they just care about that rate. As a broker, I am amazed, absolutely amazed, how many calls. I post a load on the load board, and I will get calls. And the first thing out of their mouth is, I am calling about your load. I need $2 a mile, or I need $2.50 a mile, or whatever their number is. They don't get any details. They don't know dates. They don't know what the commodity is. They don't, nothing, absolutely nothing. They just come out with a rate, and that's all they care about. And because that's all they care about, they're also willing to just throw, you know, they don't care about the contracts either.
Yeah, but you got to set them up with a carrier packet, though, right? I mean,
well, I have a carrier packet that I give them, but you know, and
you're not going to give
one
them
of the more
until they turn around and sign it, right? You're just saying they don't read anything and they just sign it and let it
go.
go.
I've toyed with the idea of putting some things in there that just ludicrous stuff just to see if anybody catches it. Something like, if you don't sign, you know, if you don't sign the first page and you only sign the last page on the signature line, then that means we don't have to pay you for at least 12 months. You know, putting something like that in there just to see if anybody questions it. I bet nobody would. I'll put that in the middle of the page somewhere. You know, I'll create one that's 4 or 5 pages long, make it so they have to write their name on the first page and the last page, and somewhere in the middle I'll put that stipulation and see how many people actually read it. See how many people actually call me out on it.
Interesting, wouldn't it?
Oh, I have just, you know,
Interesting.
you know, for anybody listening, I haven't done that yet, but stay tuned. I may do that in the future, you know, just to see. I've just toyed with the idea of just to see, because I get some crazy stuff that happens. You know, I'm going to start recording my phone calls just for that reason.
That's funny. I've been thinking about leasing out, and I've got some lease agreements, and they've got like you know, the time that they can repay your escrow. Some of them got it at 90 days. Well, that's twice as long as what the FMC says that they can have in their contract, in their lease agreement.
Yep. Oh yeah. And then a lot of them.
I'm like, well, where do you get off changing it from what's required, you know, by the FMCSA?
And a lot of them, you know, they want to pay when they get paid. You know, by FMCSA, they have to pay within 15 days. But a lot of them are
15 days, right? Yeah.
52 weeks. So a lot of them will, you know, say they'll pay when they get paid, which might be 35, 45, 60 days. You know, or they can factor their money. You know, they can pay to get their money faster and that kind of thing. It's kind of a ludicrous deal, but yeah. So all the contracts are horrible. So, but I don't want to go any further down that rabbit hole. But that's, you know, to answer your question, that's where the brokers are fighting back. They're paying the money, but they're getting what they pay for because they're putting all kind of stipulations on it.
So do you guys fight doing the tracking thing, or is the tracking just the norm these days? Everybody gets tracked and they expect it now, because I don't like the idea of, you know, having to be looked at, because right now I got a 99 Freightliner that I'm going to lease on somewhere, and you know, I'm ELD exempt, so I really don't want a GPS and an ELD in my truck.
Yeah, well, for me as a broker, I want tracking, and so I will absolutely give them all. You know, the way I look at it. And I do some warehousing for some of my customers.
You insist on it then?
I insist on it. I insist that, you know, if a broker asks, I have no problem giving it to them. And reason being, you know, I warehouse some stuff for some of my customers, which makes me a shipper at sometimes when we have to push some stuff out.
Right.
and I need to know where that stuff is because I have dealt with, and I'm sure, Bill, I'm sure that you are a great driver, and I'm sure that you would give me check calls and I could trust you. But do you know how many I can't? Because, and they sound just like you. They give me the same warm and fuzzy feeling about how great a job they're going to do. And then, I can give you an example. I had a load that picked up in, it was in January, and it was in Florida, in my warehouse, going up into northern Canada. And it wasn't really a freeze protect load, but it can't be exposed to the cold for weeks on end, right? For the transit time, it was fine, and it had plenty of time to get up there. And so I wondered where this load was because it was supposed to deliver on Friday, and I never got a call. I called the carrier. The carrier couldn't find the driver. We had no idea where the driver was. I actually met the driver in person, shook his hand, helped him secure the stuff in the trailer and everything. He seemed like a great guy. And, he said he'd have it there on time and all this stuff, and I believed him. That was the last time I heard from him. And the freight was delivered about...
Call or anything, and he didn't make it there?
No calls. The carrier couldn't get a hold of him or anything. About 3 days late, the freight was delivered, and he delivered it like it was no big deal at all. My customer freaked out because, now his product might be damaged because of the cold weather and so forth. We didn't know where it was. We didn't know where it was stored. And so because of that type of thing, I pretty much demand tracking.
Yeah.
And most brokers do because you have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff on there, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to track it.
Sure.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, I understand, but I personally I wish I like the old days.
Yeah. Well,
even though I wasn't trucking in the old days, it just sounded like a better thing for your drivers.
Well, technology has come a long way, and it's not intrusive technology, in my opinion. In fact, I'll give you one other example, then I'm going to move on to the next caller. I do have, and to shout out, I've got Tim in Florida, Desiree in Pennsylvania, and Ruben in Texas. So I'm going to get to you three. So those of you that are hanging on, I appreciate it. I'm going to wrap things up here with Bill. But I have one of the big complaints about the ELDs is the harassment issues and how the 10 hours, 10 hours and 1 minute, and that phone will be ringing, and then harassing the driver because they know exactly where they are and all that stuff. I find that with my fleet, it's absolutely the opposite. I'll have a customer calling for a check call or so forth, and I can look and see where that is. I don't have to call and bother the driver, and I can see that if the driver is on time, I can see where they're at, and I can see usually, they'll notate that they're in the sleeper berth, and I might see that they've been in the sleeper for 2 hours. I'm not going to call them and bother them because, they're probably sleeping. Now, if I didn't have that, I would have to call them every time.
They did that a lot.
Yeah, every time I'd have to call and figure out what's going on. So to me, it's a benefit, both ways. I don't have to bother the driver because I have a lot more information without the driver having to give it to me. And if I didn't have that, I'd have to call the driver, wake the driver up. And, what's funny is you have complaints both sides. You have the complaints about how the ELD tracks you. And then you have the people that are not on ELDs complaining that they get check calls all the time. So, you can't have it both ways. You have, hundreds of thousands of dollars of freight.
I was on ELDs or GPS or whatever, just the location. It wasn't ELDs at the time. And
Yeah.
they were still calling me 2 hours before I wanted to wake up just for them to feel good that I was going to get there. But all they did was ruin my sleep. So, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, I try to, and
Hey, but no problem. Hey, I appreciate you talking, and I think you guys do a great job producing the show. It's an easy thing to do, but you guys do a real great job.
I appreciate it, Bill.
Content.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And I'll throw you back on hold. Thanks for the support on that. All right, we're going to go right down the list here. So, Tim in Florida. Tim, welcome to the show. How can we help you? What's on your mind?
Hello. Hello. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Tim? How can we help you?
I'm just peachy. I called to address a conversation that you had, or a show rather, you had last year prior to the ELD mandate.
Okay.
And that was what the ELD mandate, once it became effect in April, what kind of effect it was going to have on supply and demand. And now I'm based out of the Jacksonville, Florida area. I'm independent, run my own authority flatbed, and I'm just, it's beast mode right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean it really is. I can go anywhere from anywhere at any point in time. I've never seen it like this in my 22 years of flatbedding, anyways.
Yeah, I agree.
But what I've watched is in the market that I live in terms of outbound, there's tons. There's a lot of lumber in the area that I live in. A lot of it goes to South Florida. And I was watching all these protests, and I was really keying in on that one particular show you had. It really opened my eyes to the way I looked at the ELD. And I was, because I was an anti-ELD guy at first, but I've been paper logging it legal for 3.5 years.
Okay.
So when I took to the ELD in January, I didn't notice a difference. I really didn't. Okay. So I was watching these protests, and the one common theme that all these protesters has, they were all, majority of them now, as a collective group, they were all based out of the southern tier states. For instance, you've seen a lot of protests in South Florida.
Yep.
Them guys run up out of South Florida to North Florida really cheap. I'm talking flatbed cheap. They'll run up $350, and they'll grab a load of lumber up here.
Yep.
And they'll go back down to South Florida, and the round doesn't pay them $1,100, and
Yep.
it's 700 miles. And I know that them cats are running one a day.
Yep.
One a day, and you can't do that. You cannot do that. Okay? But what I have not seen, and I've waited, what I have not seen is that capacity drive up the rates on that southbound lumber. That has not happened, and I'm curious as to why not. Because it had to have impacted them guys. Had to.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of cases, actually, the southbound lumber stuff in Florida. Now, the Florida intrastate drivers are not on ELDs yet. Florida has not implemented it for the intrastate shippers yet. So a lot of those, and I did notice the same thing that you noticed. So a lot of those are riding on an exemption. Florida hasn't adopted the same rules, and they will. And I don't remember the exact date. I don't remember if it's next year, but they will start within the state of Florida as well. Now, what the example that you just gave is definitely something that we've seen. The drivers that are in a bad market like Miami, Florida, that run 800 miles up to Atlanta or further, and they're trying to get into a good market, and they didn't log that on paper, and they would take something super cheap, and they would take cheap loads all the way across the country, and they would do it, to try to increase their revenue. They would try to do more miles for cheap rates. And that's where a lot of that was really.
And that keeps the rates down.
Exactly. So, like you said, it can't be done legally. They had to do it. They had to do it on the cheap. That was the only way to make it work. And they had to, they had to do more miles. They had to do it illegal. The only way they could make ends meet was to do it illegal. Now, there are a lot of, and I've actually personally experienced this, some intrastate Florida carriers that, Elizabeth and I have worked with some of those as well. I was actually surprised to see how many carriers only work within the state of Florida, but there are quite a few. And, we have
a Florida plate.
Yeah, we share a yard with a sod trucking company. We can't haul their freight because it doesn't pay me enough to hook my trailer up, right? But no, it's not. And he runs just about like you said, runs down, loads his truck up with sod, runs back, and that's how he does it. And the rates that he pay are just, I can't make ends meet on those rates. And when I told him my rates, he about fell out of his chair because he can't make ends meet on that. So I don't know what he's going to do when these ELDs come into play. Yep, it's going to be something else.
Well, see, right now, calendar year to date compared to, and just pick your year. But, my revenue is up 33%. My fuel cost is down 10%. My rate per mile is up 34%. I mean, it's a great swing,
It is.
But I'm running the spot market. What quasi on some dedicated lanes, but it's mainly building materials coming to Florida is on the upswing right now.
Yeah.
And it's just there's a lot of construction going on. I don't know how long the market is going to substantiate all this, but yeah, I was listening to you a while ago, and you're right. I mean, there's a lot of people out here, and they're buying new equipment, and they're going in debt, and I think that's the wrong move.
I think so,
I mean,
too.
I'm just a one-truck dog and pony show, but I'm not going to go out there and get in debt. I'm loving this economy, but I'm going to brace myself for when it plateaus out or slows down. But, I mean, I think, do you think a 5.0 growth GDP is insurmountable?
Well, we'll see. I mean, it was kind of stagnant for several years, so we might have a boom, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. We've got to play a little catch up.
Fuel costs right now, right? But see, everybody's starting to freak out because fuel costs have jumped across $3 a gallon.
Yep.
But I mean, based on the numbers that I know, on a 1,000-mile trip at 6 miles a gallon, your fuel goes up 60 cents a gallon. That's $100 on a 1,000-mile trip.
Yep.
So there's really, I mean, if your fuel cost is at or below 20%, you're still making money, man.
Oh yeah, and if you're doing it right, the higher the fuel prices go, the better it is for you in the trucking industry, because fuel is accounting wise, we categorize it as a cost of goods sold, and what that means is it's something that you buy and you resell. So you buy it to fuel your truck to provide the services, which means it's a product that you can have a markup on. So if you can mark it up a percentage wise, then the higher fuel prices go, the better it should be for the trucking industry. Now, it will have a negative effect on other parts of the economy, but we should be able to capitalize in the trucking industry. So absolutely, I don't think fuel prices are going to hurt us too much. Now you got to watch it. Like I started with fuel prices week over week, we're up 2.2%, and van rates, van specifically dropped a little bit. Now the other segments, saw a bit of an increase, and that was probably because of the fuel. So I think, fuel prices going up could be a good thing as long as they don't spike too quickly to offset the rest of the economy.
Exactly. Now I do have one question for you about this market rate, because like I said, I'm in the flatbed, so I do a lot of my market or my load watching. I have to do it on my phone app. Okay,
right.
I'm not in front of a computer,
right,
to where I can look at 2 or 3 screens. And okay, so what I do is like, for instance, let's say I'm taking a load up to the Detroit, Michigan area, okay, or Toledo area, okay, and I'm looking at a flatbed load going up there, and I'm making 20. Let's just say I'm making $2,400 from Middle Georgia up there, okay. If I'm in Orlando and I see a load in Orlando going to, say, Toledo, but I see a load in Central Georgia or Middle Georgia going to for the same money, I'm just going to bounce and go get it.
Yep.
Because the deadhead is academic to me. I mean, I'll run the first 300 miles empty. So then I look up in Toledo and I say, okay, I'm going to see what's going out to the panhandle of Texas, to the oil field. And I'll scan around, I'll look for the highest rates. And then I'm like, well, they're only paying $3 a mile to go to Odessa. But I look at a load coming back to Florida, and it's paying $3.35 a mile. It's shorter miles, but it's a better rate per mile.
Right.
My question is this, okay? When you're seeing, if you don't know the truckload to load ratio, like for instance going out to Texas, because there's a crap load of flatbed out of Dallas coming back. I ain't never seen it like that before.
Yep.
Okay, but I want to go the 1,200 miles or 1,400 miles out to the Panhandle, out to the oil basin. But I want to get $4,100 on it. But the best thing I can find is $3,200 to $3,500. I mean, are them brokers watching them truckload rates going out there to where they will? Because I've had them. They will not move, man. They will not move off that money going out there.
Okay.
You know?
All right, so I can kind of break this down. I'll try to do it quickly. I did a show a while back about quoting loads. Okay, so absolutely, the brokers watch the rates. They use all the same tools. Brokers are more informed about rates than any driver out there, guaranteed. They have all the tools, and they pay for extra tools. They pay for tools that aren't even available to carriers and drivers. All right, so the brokers are very well schooled in what the rates can pay. They know what they can get a truck for. Now, I can also tell you as a broker, I can look at the just average rates, through DAT and so forth. I know I can get a truck for that, and without a whole lot of work, I can get a truck for that. I also know that if I don't have anything else to do today, I can get a truck for a lot less than that. It's just going to take a lot more time, a lot more work on my side. Okay, so what that means is I'm going to have to call drivers that are in the area. I'm going to have to call. I don't know if we lost. Did we lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, still there. All right, so we'll have to make a lot more calls and so forth. But yeah, the brokers know, and the brokers can move it. Now, when I was talking about the quoting loads, now one misconception is that brokers don't know the cost of what it takes to drive a truck. Okay, and frankly, it's irrelevant because frankly, it's irrelevant. They don't care. Because if they can find a truck for $1 a mile and the rates are paying $2 a mile, they don't care what it costs to drive the truck. Maybe that truck just needs to get back, because it's their kid's birthday or something. Not their problem. But they do understand one concept of this. Longer miles can pay cheaper because it's more money in the bottom line for the driver. And if you go back to listen to my shows about quoting rates and things, everybody's got fixed costs. So let's say you did a load for 250 miles, right? And your fixed costs, let's say, are $300 a day, and plus your mileage costs. Well, that $300 fixed cost has to be spread out over that 250 miles. Versus, let's say you book the same load for 700 miles. Well, that first $300 of fixed cost could be spread out over 700 miles. So in effect, the longer runs could pay less per mile and still be more profitable to the truck. So longer runs, in general, pay slightly less, but even though they're a slightly lower rate per mile, they tend to be more profitable on the bottom line. Right. They take a little more time and so forth, but...
Okay, so like you can just triangle it then. You run from Georgia to Michigan to the Panhandle of Texas back to Florida.
Yep. Now let me throw out a couple more tools since I was talking about DAT so highly. Now I would highly recommend you doing this on your phone. I'd highly recommend that you get a tablet at least, or get a laptop computer, just one of those cheap ones from Walmart or something, because you get a lot more information.
I got a tablet.
Okay, a tablet is better than a phone. Not quite as good as what you're going to get off a laptop. But it's better than a phone. It's going to give you a little more information, a little easier to see the information anyway. When you click on the loads, some of the higher versions of the board, which load board are you using?
I use that, and I use Truckload.
Okay.
And then I got the broker's boards that I use.
Got it. Okay. So DAT, and I don't know which version.
I like to compare. I like to compare Truck Stop and DAT.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I pay $200 a month between the two of them, so I'm going to use the tools if I'm paying for.
Absolutely. So, Truck Stop also has similar tools, but I'm more familiar with the DAT board. So, DAT is going to have what they call the tri-haul. So when you put in a search, let's say you put in Toledo, Ohio to Amarillo, Texas. Okay, and you put that in there, it's going to say, well, that's going to be $3 a mile on average. Then it's going to say, but you have a tri-haul option of, instead of going for $3 a mile to Amarillo, you could take a load for, maybe $3.50 to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta to Amarillo, it might be $3 a mile, and that would increase your overall revenue to $3.25 a mile. Okay, so it'll put that together. Now, what I do to take that a step further is I run that search. And it's going to give you, it'll list several options. It'll say, well, you can go to Atlanta and increase it to $3.25. You can go through Nashville and increase it to $3.20. You can go through Memphis and increase it, and so forth. And it'll give you, I think about half a dozen different options of things you could do. I start searching that then. So if I can go to $3.25, I go through Atlanta, I'll run a search on what's going to Atlanta. I will get the same tri-haul option. Well, it's $3.25 to go to Atlanta, But if you go to Atlanta by way of Charlotte, I can get it for $4 a mile. So then I'll start searching, well, what do I do if I go from Ohio to Charlotte to Amarillo and, through. So you could start doing a lot more detailed searches. Now, that's a tool to help you narrow it down. You can do the same thing yourself if you don't. I pay a sickening amount of money to DAT. I really do. And I just saw the bill today because we added some more trucks. But you could do the same thing yourself with the less expensive version.
What's the difference between DAT and truck stop?
Um,
Because I'll see loads that truck stop has that DAT don't have, and vice versa.
Right. Well, it's just who subscribes to what. So I will say that that truck stop used to be a little less expensive. They're a little more comparable rates now. They have different levels of service. So for $140 or $150, you can get Truck Stop Pro, which has most of the version of what you get on DAT for $250. Okay, so very comparable type plans, and Truck Stop tends to be a little less expensive. So some of the smaller brokers used to prefer Truck Stop, although now Truck Stop seems to have changed their pricing structure and they're a little bit more in line with each other. So now it's just what features do you get for what price. And so different brokers look at that. And so some brokers use both, some use one or the other. For me, I use DAT and only DAT. I used to have Truck Stop. I still, if I log into Truck Stop, I could still reactivate it, but I almost never used it. So I just cancel that and I use solely DAT now.
Strictly.
Yep.
DAT,
So that's just a
I
preference thing.
Yeah, well, see, I've been doing that. I do that on my phone a lot, what you're talking about.
Right.
Because I'll say, well, wait a minute. If I'm going to be in Toledo, but I'm wanting to end up in Odessa, Texas, what can I take from Toledo to the Chicago market and then bounce down? But what also comes into play is when I'm going to end up in Odessa. I might want to be in Odessa on a Thursday so I can get back and get out of the Dallas market on a Friday. I don't want to be out there on a Monday. I want to be out there on a Thursday.
And timing plays a lot of that. When I look at those tri-haul rates, I look at that and, it might increase my rate per mile by 25 cents, but it's also going to add, 2 days to the trip. And 2 days, it might be maybe an extra $1,000 on the total gross money. But then, it's over 2 extra days. And for those 2 extra days, I might be able to gross $3,000 or $4,000 doing something else. So my rate per mile might not be quite as high, but the bottom dollar. And again, that goes back to, like we were saying before, sometimes the longer runs on a rate per mile basis do pay a little less, but it's more money in your pocket. So, but that being said.
Well, just one other thing, and then I'll let you run. But these guys that complain about people wanting to know, brokers wanting to know where you're at by tracking, we're tracked all day long.
Oh, yeah.
These people, they don't want to be on the ELD because they're not going to be tracked. Dude, you're tracked all day long, man.
More than you
You're
know.
tracked when you go down the highway. You're tracked when you come into the truck stop. You're tracked when you go in and buy a quarter pounder at McDonald's. I mean, you're tracked everywhere. But here's the bigger thing. I would ask these guys, if you're moving from one side of the country to the other side of the country, are you going to want to know where your 50-inch TV screen is? You're going to want to know where your stuff's at. Right. Just like these shippers are going to want to know because we're in a high theft environment.
Absolutely.
They want to know where their stuff's at.
Every one of the package delivery, the U.S. Post Office, UPS, FedEx, DHL, every one of them, they offer tracking. And the majority of people buy that tracking service, and they're paying for a $6 envelope or whatever it is, right? And they still want tracking on it. They want to know when that'll be delivered. So you've got maybe a $20 overnight express type deal, and you want to know when and where that thing is at all times. So what makes you think that somebody paying thousands of dollars to ship hundreds of thousands of dollars of freight across the country doesn't want to know where their stuff is when the technology is readily available to know easily? So with that, I appreciate the call, Tim. Thank you very much. And I do have 2 other calls on, but I think I may have lost one here real quick. But we'll get to Desiree in Pennsylvania. Desiree, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kenny.
Hi, Desiree. How can we help you? What's on your mind?
Well, I just recently got into the trucking industry as a dispatcher back in November of 2017, and I used to just run a couple of hot shots here and there just
Okay.
to start out because they're easy-ish to run.
Right.
And then I started running reefer, and now my boss, the guy who runs my company, threw a couple of dry van at me, and I've been running those guys for a couple of weeks. It's one company with multiple drivers. Some of them, like they're all based out in New Jersey, Northeast area. Most of them want to do stuff within the Northeast and all the local stuff. And then I got a couple of them that are like in Florida.
Okay.
But I'm wondering, like, it's like a domino effect. The more I can make them, the more I make for myself, you know. But I want to take care of my drivers first because, like, that's their business. That's their livelihood. Like, I've got other drivers I'll be taking care of fine. Like, I'm wondering what I can do to best capitalize for their company because, like, I don't want to lose drivers.
Right.
And, I mean, I used to get stuff from Coyote, and now I don't even see stuff for the Northeast for Coyote, and it's very frustrating because, like, I had a really great contact within Coyote, a guy I trusted, and now they don't even post anything anymore.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let me preface this by saying I'm not a huge fan of dispatch services. And if you follow me, you probably know that. But I'm not going to hang up on you. I'm going to help, okay? So, as a dispatcher, your sole primary purpose is to be the go-between between the drivers and the brokers. Am I right?
Truth.
Okay. So, your primary job then is to find freight for the drivers, which means you need to be making calls and building relationships because the drivers are depending on the relationships that you have to keep them moving. So this business is really all about relationships. Now, finding it on the load board is a good way to start, but then you need to call out I'll give you another tool that you can use. What you need to do is start calling various brokers in the area and try to establish yourself, whether you have a truck available for them on that day or not, and see if you can start getting on their preferred truck list and see if they can offer you some of this freight before they put it on load boards. That, if I was a dispatcher, that's what I would be focused on.
I've had that happen a couple of times with like one or two brokers.
Okay. All right. So what I would recommend is, do you use DAT?
No, I use Truck Stop. If I can't find anything on Truck Stop that day, then I would call my boss, and he has access to a bajillion other tools, DAT, amongst other load boards. I think he even uses Trucker's Edge, and he gives me access to it if I can't find anything on the load board I pay for.
Okay. Trucker's Edge is DAT, but they have a tool, and it might behoove you to pay the upcharge to get the higher level board. Now, as a dispatcher, you know, if I hired a dispatcher, I would want them to have the best tools. I want them to have the tools that I can't even afford, right? So you might need to invest in higher end stuff. Do you have Truck Stop Pro, like $150 a month?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that's a good place to start. Now, I'm not 100% familiar on the feature that Truck Stop. I know they have something like this, but I couldn't tell you where it's at. But DAT does have a version of this called Lane Makers. Now, what Lane Makers is, you put in a search on whatever lane you want. Let's say it's from, Edison, New Jersey to Toledo, Ohio. You put in a search on that, and it will show you.
Ironically, Edison is where all of my guys are from.
Ah, well, see. Okay, so Edison, New Jersey to whatever lane they want to run, you're going to put a search in on that, and it will show you. It won't show you the loads. It's going to show you all of the brokers that have had loads on that lane for a certain period of time, and you can stretch it out 30 days, 60 days, a month, a year, whatever you want to do. Okay, and it'll show you that. So what then you do at that point is call that broker and say, look, I have 5 trucks based out of Edison, New Jersey. I see that you've moved 3,000 loads on this lane in the past 60 days. We need to talk. Okay, I don't know what you've got right now, and all my trucks are booked this week, but starting next week, I would like to move some of your loads. What do we have to do? Let's talk, right? And you need to get on that broker's good side. So you need to find the brokers that have the freight and build a relationship with them. Then the rates come second. So obviously the trucks want the best rates, but you're not going to get the rates if you don't have the freight. So find the freight, build a relationship, and then work on getting the best rates possible. And you're going to do that by, leveraging your relationship with these trucks to solve the problem and make sure that especially if you have trucks based in Edison, here you have a lot of drivers don't want to go to Edison. These trucks live there, right? So, getting freight in and out of Edison, New Jersey area, up, anywhere up into the city, in Secaucus or even New York City, if you have drivers that are comfortable doing that, find brokers that are moving freight in and out of there, build relationships with them, and say, look, I have trucks that specialize in this. We need to talk. What do you got? How can we fix the problem? Right? That's where I would start. And using tools like that, and I would do that across the country and say, look, I have trucks that run this lane often. I see you have freight on this lane often. Make sure that I am on your email blast. And when you have these loads to move, I want to be the person that you call first.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like really cool. I never even thought to use like a lane finder for brokers. Like I didn't even know that was a tool that existed. So I'll definitely be looking into that.
Absolutely,
to
yes.
better find stuff for my guys, because I don't want my guys sitting, and I want to prove that not all dispatchers are a bunch of junk.
Yeah, and I see value in what a dispatcher can do, but you're going to have to really put some effort in to be the best. Because I'm not a big fan of dispatchers, because I know there are a lot of dispatchers that, they're load board scrubbers, and they don't try to build relationships. They're once and done type relationships with, book that load, try to haggle over a rate and move on. And it's the ones that are really going to have a relationship with the brokers and find the freight and have the freight available. Those are the dispatchers that will exceed and actually could be successful at this, and that I don't necessarily, I wouldn't have such a big problem with those.
See, that's the kind of stuff that I do. When I go to look for freight for my drivers, I don't look at all the random brokers that I've never, like companies I haven't worked with yet.
Right.
I go to the guys, like, I don't even post my trucks or even look at the load bar. I say, hey, I call up, like, Coyote. I used to call them every day. I used to call Patrick Keene with Coyote. He recently just got moved up in the company. Mm-hmm. So I call him up on my personal cell phone and be like, hey, I got trucks. You know where they're at. You know what they like to do. What do you got? And he did me really great, and I enjoyed working with him, because other brokers that I wasn't familiar with, I've gotten burned on.
Yes. Well, let me back up a little bit, though.
Facebook as
Well, Facebook is really good too, but better than Facebook is LinkedIn. Really should have a good LinkedIn profile. But let me back up a little bit.
I have a LinkedIn account.
You said you don't post your trucks, so you rely on calling them?
I don't until I've called my contacts for brokers.
Gotcha. Well, let me give you another tip. This is kind of the most basic way to find a load is post your trucks, let them call you. And so I would absolutely, start at the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit would be post your trucks, find their niche and try to find freight for them. And then, in between that, reach out and try to build new relationships with new brokers. But the low-hanging fruit would be post your truck, keep that posting refreshed, and take those phone calls every morning. Do all your research and know what the market will handle, know what the rates would be. So no matter where they call, what load they've got going where, that you know what that market should pay and what that lane should pay and what you'd like to have on it, and let them call you first. I mean, that is like the low-hanging fruit, and that's where you should start. From there, though, you should really have all your relationships like I was talking about before.
Definitely. And I've been working at it, getting better. Like, I don't like to just a one and done. I want to be able to build. Like, I'll try to even backhaul my guys, because they're all pretty much local to the Northeast. They'll do like New Jersey, PA, a little bit of Ohio. So like PLS usually has a lot of stuff there, and I try to work with that broker. Like, oh, so can you get me back to Edison? That's what my guys like to do. To build that relationship. Like, if you got me, I got you. Yeah,
exactly. And so you're doing the right thing. I think you just need to. You need to get out and market more. One way to market would be, like I said, find the brokers that are moving the freight and go to them, knock on their door, right? Call them, whatever you have to do. So that would be the beginning. You're based in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
What part of Pennsylvania are you out of?
York.
Okay. So you're like 2 hours from the Edison area. So it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing to find the brokers that might be in your area that have done the personal relationship building with the shippers in that area. So they're going to be brokers that are based in New Jersey and Eastern PA. All right, and find them, and you might actually go need to meet them in person. Go have coffee with them, take them to lunch.
That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. And because the ones that are most intimate and know the needs of their shippers are the ones that are local to their shippers and have gone in person and wined and dined the shippers in person. But you need to do the same thing with the brokers. Now, that being said, there's a gray area for the legal aspects of a dispatching service. And, are you crossing the line of being a broker or not? And this is kind of where I have an issue with dispatching services, because a lot of them are. But there's nothing that says that you can't represent a carrier and go find them direct freight either. You can be a representative of a carrier and go find them direct. You don't have to work directly with brokers.
Right.
Have you ever thought of that? Have you ever tried to that?
I believe my boss has a few times, and
Okay.
I think he's gotten a couple of customers personal for just a few of our trucks.
Okay. Yeah, well, that would be a way to do it. If you can book the freight on the carrier directly and find it direct for the shippers. Now, being in York, PA, you're in the same market as these trucks that you're trying to help. So you could do the same thing. And, start with going out and talking to the brokers in person. But, once you get comfortable with it, go start meeting direct shippers in person. Ask the carrier if they would like you to, make some sales calls for them and see what you can do.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Why have I come across so many seasoned drivers? People have been doing this for quite some time. It seems that everybody really despises dispatchers, and the only most of my drivers are new to their authority, and they use us for a few months and then move on. What is the issue with dispatchers?
Okay. Well, let me try to sum it up. Dispatching services were few and far between before 2013. Most dispatching services back then were actually working as brokers. MAP 21 was a new law that was passed, raised the broker bond from $10,000 to $75,000. A lot of the smaller brokers that weren't moving a large volume of freight they just closed their doors and became dispatch services, just signed that freight on with a carrier that they were working with, and decided to just dispatch for carriers rather than try to maintain their brokerage, because it's less risk for them. They're essentially doing the same job, but it's less risk. And all the paperwork and everything flows through the carrier rather than through their brokerage. So that's one thing that happened, starting in 2013. Now, fast forward to 2018, and the same thing is happening, but dispatch services are sprouting up like wildfire because rates are phenomenal right now, which is what I've been talking about. And with fantastic rates, it's easy for a driver to fall out of the truck and land in a pile of money. It's also easy for dispatchers that don't know what they're doing to accidentally, blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. So dispatchers that don't know what they're doing are getting into the business, becoming dispatchers, but they're just load board scrubbers. They're not building relationships. They're not doing all the things that I was just recommending that you try to do. And they're going to pocket, whatever their 5 or 10% off of each load. They're going to put that in their pocket. And when the market turns, they're going to shut the doors and leave those drivers out to hang, because that's what happens every time. This happened in 2014. So a lot of the seasoned drivers don't like that, because a lot of dispatch services are operating a very gray area, operating as brokers, because the way the law is worded, you could be a bona fide agent, but you can't give preferential treatment between trucks, which means, let's say you had 2 of your trucks working for 2 separate carriers, but you represent both of them, but they're both sitting right next to each other in a parking lot in a truck stop somewhere. Which truck do you give the load to first? There's no way to do that without giving one of them preferential treatment. Okay? Which means, by law, you would not be able to be a dispatcher. You'd have to be a broker. Now, that's a gray area, because, you can say you're representing them, you're a bona fide agent, but bona fide agents, technically can't really represent more than one carrier. Now, the FMCSA has not cracked down on them, and FMCSA is there is no terminology for what a dispatcher can do. They've got brokers, bona fide agents, and carriers. There's no room in there for a dispatching company. So, that's kind of why there's a lot of people that have a sour taste in their mouth. A lot of brokers spend a lot of money, and
Right,
they did
and I can
pony
totally
up.
understand that because I have seen dispatch companies that come out and they're out for their own gain and they're charging ridiculous percentages and not really thinking about the driver.
Right. And, like I said, in a lot of cases, the dispatch companies are in it, and when the freight market turns and they're not making the money anymore, they'll just close up their doors and go do something else. And then on the flip side of that, you have the brokers that were, the $10,000 bond brokers that ponied up the money to put the $75,000 up, and, they feel like they're getting their throats cut by dispatch services who don't have the same investment. So
Right.
there's a lot of animosity, and sour taste in people's mouths against dispatch services for a lot of reasons.
And I can definitely understand that. I just hope that I can prove to the guys that I'm running and any new drivers I may get that I'm not like all the other dispatch services. Like, I do want to take care of you because as long as I'm taking care of you, then I can take care of my family.
Absolutely. And like I said, I didn't hang up on you. I gave you some advice, and I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt on that. And I hope it works out for you. And feel free to call us in the future and let us know how it plays out.
Definitely, and I'll be tuning in a lot more often to just gain any type of knowledge I can about the market because that's definitely something I should know.
Awesome.
I've been trying to follow along with like the DAT, what's hot, where to go, and the averages for the equipment my guys run.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad I can help. I joined the Facebook groups and stuff as well. The Trucking with Authority and Rates and Lanes group. That's where you can find us. And
Oh yeah,
if you
I
have more
follow
questions.
quite a few of them. I also follow like the do not work with these broker kind of stuff.
Right.
And yeah, I definitely
Right.
follow a lot of stuff. Like half my Facebook is nothing but trucks like related pages, so I can keep up with everything to make sure I am taking care of my drivers the best way that I can.
Awesome. Is Desiree your name on Facebook as well? Use your real name over there?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll see if I can find you when we hang up, and we can talk more over there. So in the meantime, I appreciate the call. I am going to put you back on hold, wrap things up before we get cut off anyway at the 2-hour mark. It's hard to believe we went 2 hours again tonight. So I always start these shows thinking that we're going to go short, and then the phones start ringing at the end. So that being said, guys, do your homework. Understand the markets. Know what you're doing.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio.
And there
Goodbye.
it goes. So that was it with the phone call, but I know we're still live on Facebook. So, guys, do your homework. And thank you all for joining me. And as always, remember to dream big, aim high, strategize your plan, earn your success, and only you drive you. Have a good night, everybody.